What's up, Tube? Welcome back. We should be live. We have a special live chat today. It's not one of the normal Monday or Wednesdays. This is a special one now. You guys have to let me know if crazy things are happening with lag because I'm in the middle of a big windstorm and I'm on my mobile hotspot. I'm not even using normal internet. So let me know real quick if there's a bad lag coming through. But we have James and Keith Tao. I'm not exactly sure how to say that last name. But we have them here from TII Armory. They are the creators of the Bushwhacker, that thing you see right back there that we've been playing with all week. We've been having a lot of fun. The videos have been awesome. And yeah, so after a whole week, we get to talk to the two people who created that thing. And I'm just going to throw down a couple things right here. Go ahead and ask as many questions as you want. Keep it Bushwhacker related, 500 or big bore related. Let's not talk about 9mm or gardening today, but keep the comments or questions respectful and everything's good. We got Brad Branch, he's our watchdog, and we got other moderators too, but Brad is definitely on it tonight. So like SpongeBob says, don't be a jerk. And if you are, he's going to zap you. So don't challenge him because you won't come back. But anyway, let me bring in James and Keith. Hopefully our strength is good with the internet.
Hey guys.
Hey everybody.
So James and Keith, what is up?
Oh, we're doing a lot of bushwhacking, Been enjoying the video.
There you go. So go ahead and introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about yourselves, because I think that's the easiest way to do it.
All right. Well, I'm James. You can call me Jim, either or. Been into guns for a long time. Just decided to go for it with a business of our own a little while ago. And we got an idea, and I pitched it to Keith, and he said no.
I said no, yeah.
Yeah, and then I pitched the exact same idea in exactly the same way about 3 days later, and for some reason he said yes. So that got us started on the wild
I've been
ride.
questioning that decision ever since.
But it's been a lot of fun. We
Just
got a
had
lot
to sleep
of
on it.
new stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
We got a lot of new stuff coming too. It's not just going to be the Bushwhacker. That's just the opening salvo.
Sounds good. That's exciting. So what's the initial process when you said you decided to do this? What was the first step? What the first thing that you had to do to create this?
Well, we were thinking about it, and it seemed to me like there's an awful lot of cylinder space in a BFR, and we know it's safe with that 530 head size 500 Magnum. So we thought, why not just lengthen that pressure curve, keep that pressure curve at the same height, so to speak, but sustain it for longer with slower powder, a bigger case, and see what we can do. And I knew the recoil would be really bad if we didn't put a brake on there. Initially, Keith was thinking, just from a logistics standpoint, it'd make more sense to have folks send in the cylinders so we wouldn't have to deal with shipment of guns. But I thought, well, the brake's probably going to be necessary. And we had a lot of experience with the Smith 500 at this point. So that's a pretty manageable platform. So we picked up a BFR in 500 and we ran just our standard loads through it. And we thought, man, that kicks a lot worse.
Yeah.
It's bad. It's actually worse than most Bushwhacker loads if you load the 500 mag hot enough in the BFR, especially with the Bisley grip frame, and especially if you get into the Plus L 500 mags. So, and then from there,
I've heard
first concern. What's that?
I've heard the BFRs are a little bit more punishing for sure.
Definitely.
Like you said, I was kind of hoping we wouldn't have to put brakes on them. And we picked the gun up, and I can't remember what Jim was doing, but I took it to the range by myself. And it'd been a while since I shot the X-frame. And I took that out and I shot a cylinder through it. And about 3 rounds in, I'm like, man, this is really bad. And so I shot 5 through it, and then I picked up, I can't remember what else I took, and I was shooting that, and I thought, okay, now I'm good and warmed up. I'm going to go back to that. It's not going to be as bad. This can't be as bad. And I got about 2 rounds in that time, and I'm like, man, I'm not really sure I want to finish this cylinder. I finished it, and I came back, and I said, no, you're right. We're breaking these. We're absolutely putting a break on these.
Okay, self-preservation kicked in.
Yeah.
One of the big priorities to start with was getting brass that we could use. So the way we did it initially was we took 375 Ruger cases, we threaded rims onto them, which was the idea that I pitched to Keith that he didn't like very much, but then he made it happen. And then we took a small Charger Unique and a case full of cream of wheat. That's how you blow bottleneck cases out straight without having to go through a bunch of dies. And then we trimmed them back and started. That's how the development started with the case itself.
Originally, at the time we were. Go ahead. So you guys were having a hard time. Wasn't that kind of time where we had some brass problems? Sorry, we have a lag. We were in a brass crunch at the moment when you guys started this, weren't we? When most companies were kind of having a hard time producing what people needed.
Right, that's true. And I just happened to have a decent supply of 375 Ruger on hand because I had a rifle in that caliber. I eventually sold it, but I kept the brass. So we thought this is a good place to start. And then it's a whole nother story when we started to actually have brass produced for this cartridge. Yeah. But long story short there is that Bertram over in Australia is really easy to deal with, and they're just great for this type of work. You know, they don't require a huge minimum order. They require a substantial one, but it's something that maybe not everybody could do, but a lot of people could do if they had an idea and wanted to go for it. So shout out to Bertram.
Yeah.
If you're watching this, Richie.
Yeah, thank you. Part of it all possible for us. So a lot of people want to argue and they want to get in the comment section right off the bat, and they just want to say that no, all these other calibers defeat this gun, and this is not, you know, the most powerful handgun or revolver, and they want to constantly try to cite other pistols. Can you, I've noticed you have to get in the conversation all the time, and you really have to educate, and you do it respectfully and you do it, you know, smartly. I learn a lot every time I read one of those comments. I can't wait for the comment because I can't wait for your reply. It's awesome. But can you guys explain to us why it does defeat those just without having to type it out in the comments like you always do? You guys have had to do it so many times now. Can you just tell us why it really is so powerful compared to
well, we'll look at a few different examples. The biggest example is the 50 BMG, obviously. And 50 BMG is a huge cartridge. It dwarfs the Bushwacker. So people go on Wikipedia or they remember their ballistics data or they look at factory ammo and they look at those numbers. And those numbers are like a 750 grain bullet at 2,800 feet per second, 250 grains of powder. Those numbers come from maybe a 30-inch barrel. Maybe a little longer, maybe a little shorter. But you're not getting those numbers from the boutique 50 BMG pistols that are sold. I'm not aware of any chronograph testing of those handguns. It'd be interesting to see. But the handicap there is you may have 250 grains of powder, but the powder types you have to use are very slow burning. So that you don't actually reach those peak velocities in a handgun length barrel. You're actually probably going to fall fairly short of the Bushwacker. You might not even be all that much over a 500 Smith & Wesson. And, you know, there have been handguns chambered in rifle rounds for a long time. You've got handguns like the 300 Win Mag that's been popular in the Encore. But there's a reason you don't see handguns in cartridges like 300 Weatherby Mag too often, or 3378 or 300 Ultra Mag. Is because you get up to 300 Win Mag, and that's about tops for a 15-inch barrel. leaving aside the strength issue, the Encore going to a larger head size. But and that's the same issue that you'll have with the 500 Nitro Express, the 600 Nitro Express, all those NEs. They use very slow burning powder. They have very large cases. They run at low pressure, so they lose a lot of performance going to a shorter barrel. And that doesn't mean that we look down on people with those guns. I think they're cool, but they're not as powerful as people think they are. I'll tell you that. There are chronograph numbers for that 600 Nitro Express handgun, the manufacturer. I think it's pronounced Pfeiffer Zaliska, but I'm not Austrian, so I might be butchering that. It's 1,500 feet per second with a 900 grain bullet from a 13-inch revolver, which is pretty comparable to the Bushwhacker, but just a little bit under our top loadings from a 10-inch barrel. Oh, and one more note, not to talk your ear off, but
No, go
it's not
for it.
just about it's not just about muzzle energy, and you can see that in your videos. I think you've shown it really well. It's about how you're able to harness that muzzle energy. So if you take a 650 grain ball load or a 750 grain AMAX from a 50 BMG, those are made for either machine guns or long-range rifles. They're not made for hunting big game. They deflect very easily when penetrating heavy tissue, bone, and so forth. What you want for that type of hunting is you want a flat nose brass or copper solid. And when you look at the bullets that are available, there are some very good bullets available in 510 diameter, which is 50 BMG, 500 Nitro. There are some very good bullets available in 620 diameter, which is 600 Nitro, and so forth. But those are brass bullets by and large, and those are illegal for use in handguns. 500 caliber, which is what the Bushwhacker is, has a really broad array of bullets. You can use cast bullets for practice relatively cheaply. You can use the copper solids that you've shown so well. Those perform magnificently. They penetrate straight, they penetrate true, they harness the power really well. Or there's also some hollow point copper designs that we're going to be working with soon that I'm confident will do very well at range for medium, maybe some heavy game.
That solid copper through that gel block was pretty incredible, because almost all bullets at some point seem to deflect in that gel at least a little bit. But that thing just kept a straight on path all the way through. It was just a hammer. We didn't encounter bone or anything like that, but I can imagine it's going to do a crush. It plowed straight through that block, and I could see after going through the block too, the one destruction test, it straight through. It didn't do anything wacky. So I see exactly what you're saying there. And I remember a comment before, they were questioning the bullet style, but like you said, that's what you want, is that flat face bullet to crush through things and not do that deflection. So definitely, I can't wait to see what the other offerings you have that are going to come up. I can only imagine it gets better. We've heard people wanting Lehigh defense, things like that. So I can only imagine it's going to get cooler.
Yeah, Lehigh and Cutting Edge, two great companies, and they've really brought bullet technology so far forward. The bullets that were used in the 450 Nitro, 470 Nitro, that sort of thing, back in the golden age of Africa hunting, those weren't particularly great bullets. Those old, even the solids, you had a lot of bullet failures even at those mild velocities. And when you went to the 458 Win Mag and the 460 Weatherby in the 1950s, there were quite a few bullet failures that happened. And these days, they've got that bullet technology down to a science, and you don't have to worry about a lot of those problems anymore with those solids.
So, yeah. So, do you see do you see any kind of new developments coming along here real soon, since we are getting much higher velocities, not only out of your gun, but they're talking about like the 400 Legend, they're talking about coming out of hot rod 10 millimeter. So what do you see as far as the future of bullet technology right now? Now that we're learning what solid copper does, is there more room for advancement there, or is that kind of plateauing?
Well, what's great is I'm sure I get emails from Cutting Edge all the time with new offerings they're bringing out for different calibers. And I think, just like I was talking about with Bertram, we've had a lot of problems in the reloading industry over the past few years getting what we want, but there's still elements of the reloading industry that are really exciting and dynamic. And a smaller outfit like ours can approach companies like that and do new things. You don't have to necessarily be a big company like Winchester or Remington to go to Cutting Edge or go to Lehigh and say, I want to try something new. But then there's also the aspect that these bullets are so good that, Lehigh rates many of their extreme penetrators. I think they're all rated for 5,000 feet per second. So even if you've got a bullet that they designed for 10 millimeter or 41 Magnum, you can just pick it up and load it in a different cartridge, and you can be assured that it's probably going to perform really well. And you can't make that assumption with traditional jacketed bullets. Like, there's certain 45 caliber bullets that are designed for 45 Colt, and if you put them in 454 Casull or 460 Smith & Wesson, they don't perform all that well. But with these other bullets are more forgiving, and it's really, it'll be really interesting to see what people come up with once they start becoming more aware of them, as I think they are.
And then, as far as the lighter bullets, when we're talking about the copper ones, I mean, why does that work so good? I've seen you explain it, and I've watched your video, but where is the top off, do you think, grain weight, where it's not going to be as effective with that muzzle brake? Because I've watched both of you shoot that gun in totally different styles, but you both have the same reactions to the lead versus the lighter copper. And I mean, it's crazy. It's just a massive difference. But if you could explain the difference here. We all like the fun, heavy stuff, and everybody keeps asking, can we get a 700 grain? Can we get a 700 grain? And I'm thinking, like, are you sure you want that? Because Keith right there, he masters that gun, and I see the 620 giving him a hard time, and he's got it. We'll talk about your shooting styles later, but I mean, people just want to keep going harder and harder. So could you just explain what that's all about? Because that seems to be a pretty hot topic right there.
Well, as far as recoil, the reason why the lighter weight bullets, even at a comparable power level, recoil a lot less in this gun is because of the muzzle brake. So you get a higher gas volume, you have a higher powder charge with a lighter bullet weight, and the bullet's accelerating faster, the bullet's reaching a higher velocity. So it's reaching that larger gas volume is reaching the muzzle brake much sooner. So you have a shorter period of that initial recoil impulse. With a heavy bullet, you have a longer period of that initial recoil impulse where the brake is not really helping you. So it gets to be with the lighter bullets, and I think people who haven't tried the gun have a hard time understanding this because they don't have a big point of reference here. But the lighter bullets are a lot like shooting a 44 Magnum, like a 310 grain bullet at 375 H&H velocities in the Bushwacker is a lot like shooting a lot of loads in many 44 Magnums recoil-wise, because muzzle brakes work better with lighter guns. They work faster in the shot cycle with a shorter barrel. So technically they work better with a handgun than they do with a rifle. And but then you go to those heavier bullets, you get that longer delay, and you get, frankly, a less practical handgun. And that's why I discourage people from pursuing the heavier bullets, because traditionally the reason why people went to heavier and heavier bullets is because of the limitations of jacketed bullets and the limitations of lead bullets. A lead bullet, if you push it at really high velocity, you do have a lot of momentum, but it's all wasted basically because the bullet won't hold together in heavy game. And they're good for practice. They're cheaper. And with powder coating and gas checks, they hold up well to really high velocities. They shoot really well, but they don't hold up well in an animal, in a serious application. So the way you get around this is you maintain bullet momentum, but you increase mass, you lower impact velocity, the bullet holds up better. But like you saw, even at 1,700 feet per second in that ballistics gel, which is fairly fast, but not super fast, with a 620 grain bullet, lead bullet, then that's a heat treated bullet. That's not a pure lead bullet. That's that's alloyed about right, it expands a lot, and the copper bullet deflects less. The leather copper bullet deflects less, and when you go to copper, you don't need the weight. You just don't, because you don't have to worry about the bullet coming apart, those bullet failures. And I will point out that 500 Nitro Express, 470 Nitro Express, they never used bullets as heavy as people think are ideal in the 500 Magnum. You know, they never used a 700 grain bullet in the 500 Nitro Express, which is a much larger round, much more powerful round. It's actually, in a rifle, a 500 Nitro Express is a bit more powerful than the Bushwacker from a 10-inch barrel. So they always used 570 grains in the Nitro. They used 535 grain in the 500 Jeffrey and up to 600 grain in the 505 Gibbs, but they never went to 700. Those just look cool, and you know, people have fun with them, but they have problems. You know, they don't stabilize as well. They don't in the air or in game. You know, they tumble at relatively short ranges. They're just less versatile bullets, if you ask me, especially in the Bushwacker.
What were the longest ranges you've been able to get accuracy with? I know you've had some great accuracy on target. What is the distance you guys have been taking it out there?
Well, Keith's the better shot than me with the handgun. You know, the rifle,
He's a great shot.
I'm pretty good, but with the handgun, I'm not quite as good as Keith. I've seen him take a Bushwacker to 200 yards. That's pretty much the limit of what we can shoot around here because our rifle range taps out at 200 yards. But I just saw him yesterday. He hit 3 shots out of 5 at 200 yards with 520 grain bullets and a 10-inch Bushwacker, going 2,140 feet per second. And I don't expect you to take my word for it, because I'll get some video one of these times.
No, I believe it, because I've seen you shoot, Keith. Can you, now, on that subject right there, can you explain the styles of shooting? You both have 2 different styles of shooting, but I know you guys know what you're doing and talking about with revolvers. Can you transfer that knowledge better than I can explaining? I tried to explain it in the one video, but can you explain what you feel is the proper way to shoot these revolvers, and why does the style look so wild? I guess I might say a lot of people have accused the gun of being totally out of control, and I can say for a fact that it's not out of control. It's method. Can you guys explain that? And you do have different shooting methods, but you're extremely proficient with the gun.
So I would say I started shooting the really heavy recoiling revolvers. I would say when I got several years ago, I got a 500 Wyoming Express Freedom Arms, and that was substantially more recoil than anything I'd shot before,
including 500 Smith & Wesson.
Yes, that gun is, I would say, second only to the unconverted BFR. A 500 Smith & Wesson BFR without a muzzle brake is the worst recoiling handgun I've ever shot, by far. But the Freedom Arms, I learned a lot with that. It actually did hit me in the head once, and that it's all a matter of, you kind of have to get used to the gun, and kind of, because you can put your hands out and you can really death grip it, and the gun might not move very much, but it's just beating on you. And if you want to be able to shoot it with any sustainability, you have to let it move really as much as you can is good, because that's less that it's putting into you. It's just like if you watch the videos of, you know, big artillery guns or tanks or anything, the barrel recoils back. It's got a whole recoil system. Well, when you shoot one of these handguns, you are the recoil system. You gotta let the gun move, otherwise you're not gonna like it.
And it's a huge advantage to be able to let that gun move. You convert the recoil to motion. You don't absorb all of it into your body, and people expect you to, because I guess that's what you want to do with maybe a 9mm, is you really lock down on it, keep that muzzle down, you keep the volume of fire up. And I appreciate that. You know, different platforms require different skill sets, different mindsets. But with this big stuff, it's a huge advantage to convert that recoil to motion. A rifle doesn't quite give you that leeway. You know, if you try to convert the recoil to motion, you take the stock off your shoulder, it's gonna snap your collarbone like a drumstick. So yeah,
you're right.
that's the right way to shoot a big bore handgun.
Yeah. I know when I try
correct
to
me
shoot,
if I'm wrong, but I see the gun going to the left side of you most of the time, correct? That's what it seemed to do with me, is follow the path of least resistance, and whether you're right or left-handed, I was assuming it will do that, because we watching the video and it looks like you guys are getting whacked in the face sometimes, and that's what people have accused me of, and I try to keep telling them, I swear to God, it's not hitting me, it's doing the left-hand thing. Is that what you guys are seeing, is path of least resistance?
And that's because of the torque induced by the twist rate. You know, we got rifled barrels, not smooth bores. So when that bullet goes down the barrel, it's going to torque the gun to your left. And it's not even something you have to try to do, you know. It's just it's going to do that. Even if you fight it, it's going to tend in that direction.
Yeah,
and people miss that because of camera angles.
Oh yeah, but I've tried to tell people that death gripping revolvers, like, you guys know the 69 Combat Magnum. I've seen you guys shoot that pretty darn good too. But you know that gun specifically. If you death grip that gun with heavy grain bullets, it just stings like hell. I mean, it's horrible.
It does, yeah.
I try to tell everybody with that one, you got to ride that one out a little bit. Otherwise, you're not going to want to shoot it. But I love to shoot it because I've learned how to shoot it. So.
Yeah. It is a lot of fun once you figure out once you have a good feel for how much ground you can give the gun without hurting yourself, without it coming back and hitting you in the face. Once you have a good feel for that, it's a lot of fun because it's not beating you up near so bad, and it's sustainable.
Yeah. And do you still for me, I get a rush out of it. Are you still, I do my little micro adjustments and I get ready for it. It's like I'm moving my hand a millimeter at a time, trying to get that perfect shot because I want to control it. And then I build up to it. I take a shot. Are you guys still getting that same rush every time you go out there with this thing?
Oh yeah.
It's a huge adrenaline rush. I have a hard time calming down because it's kind of exciting to shoot it, and maybe I'm
hand shaking,
but it's kind of fun. You know, not a lot of people know about it yet. It's fun to bring it to the range and bring it out of the case, and somebody's standing next to you. And he's thinking, what's that? And then you touch it off and he's thinking, what's that?
That's got to be awesome.
Yeah.
That would definitely be a fun experience. We had the one guy that he's pretty close to us. He's a nice guy, but he's if we're going to touch anything off pretty big, give him a warning. And I've almost forgotten, and I called him. I said, hey, we're going to be touching off something pretty big. And if I didn't give him the warning, no, he jumps out of his skin.
Yeah, it can always get worse, right?
So now the other thing is that muzzle blast. I've tried to warn people that we've seen the nighttime shooting that. So we got to see the effect of, I don't know if anybody in here people in here have gotten to see it, but it hasn't. So we saw that extreme stuff muzzle. So before I get to ask you, what is that? That's with the copper, we had a little bit more of a spark situation. We had a lot of flame in that, but all the, as you call it, ejecta, I think that's the right word. Is that primarily hot gas? Is that little micro pieces of powder? What is all that's flying out of there?
So I think the sparks you see, if you notice, they're kind of a whitish color, and I'm pretty sure that's titanium from the brake. And the brakes, all muzzle brakes, all barrels, you know, they do wear over time. And I think that's just, you're seeing some of that because titanium is a flammable metal in really small, you know, powdered quantities or anything like that. And if you grind titanium or burn titanium, it burns really bright white. So I'm pretty sure that's what the sparks are. The powder really does. I mean, some of it's the powder, obviously, but the powder really does. We haven't noticed huge muzzle blast or muzzle flash with it. And I was kind of surprised with that because we are burning 100 plus grains of powder in some of these.
And we're using primarily H335. We're diversifying a bit as we play around with different bullets, but our standby has been H335, and I know people have said in other calibers, and I've seen it, you can get pretty good fireball going with that, but I just don't notice it much with the Bushwhacker.
So someone had mentioned that actually they wanted me to ask you about that. That was definitely a question they wanted to ask. Is that due to the efficiency of the powder burning? Do you think? Do you guys have it figured out really that? And is that the right powder? Because and also with the H335, I mean, everybody knows that's like a 308 type of powder. At least that's what I know it as, unless I got my powders wrong. But it's surprising to me that is so effective in there. Is that really what it is? Is just burning it all the way off like it's supposed to?
I think, especially in the 10-inch barrel, you burn most of it. You don't really need as long of a barrel as people traditionally have thought with the express type rifle cartridges, and that's pretty much what the Bushwhacker is. You should think of it as more akin to a 458 Win Mag than you should as like a 500 Magnum. And you don't really need the barrel lengths people have traditionally thought. I know B&M rifles. Some of you may know B&M rifles. They've played around a lot with carbines, 18-inch barrels in calibers pretty similar to the Bushwhacker. They're rimless rounds, but they're pretty similar. And they get really respectable velocities, and you get a rifle that handles a lot better than those old Winchester Safari Express 24-inch guns, or even my cherished Weatherby 26-inch barrel Mark Vs. Yeah, you just don't need a super long barrel to burn all that powder. And functionally, you've got like a 13-inch barrel and a 10-inch gun. You've got like a 10.5-inch barrel with a 7.5-inch gun, because you should think of that 3-inch cylinder as part of the barrel. Obviously, you have that cylinder gap. It bleeds off some gas, bleeds off some velocity, but the barrel's a little longer than we tend to think of it in a revolver, especially one with a cylinder this long.
Gotcha. Now, on the whole reloading thing, another question that comes up is the crimp. You have various crimps on these various different loads. Can you tell us what they're about? Because I get a lot of questions of the dual crimp, and can I do that at home and special dies? And I don't want to regurgitate things without being accurate. So could you tell us the reloading situation for people who want to do it at home? I personally, I've said it before, I leave the reloading of this stuff and handling this up to you guys, because this is kind of a stick of dynamite in my hand, and I'll let you guys handle that for now. But for the people that want to do it at home, what is the crimp situation about? And how do they put their hands on the proper dies and this and that to do it?
So basically, one of the historic problems with big bore handguns is that the bullet can pull out of the case on a round that you fire one round, you fire 2 rounds, fire 3 rounds, and it could be that the next 2, the next 3, a round out of one of the next chambers pulls crimp. It's just like a bullet puller. You stick the cartridge in there and you whack it, and the inertia is driving the bullet out. Well, that's what recoil's doing, especially with a very heavy bullet and with very heavy recoil. So we do those dual crimps as a way to give you more grip on the bullet than you would have if you just had a single crimp like you traditionally see. And there's a couple reasons why we do them for a few different loads. So, for example, the 400 grain copper load probably doesn't need a dual crimp because of the recoil, but it needs it because that's a cutting edge bullet, and it doesn't have a very deep crimp groove. You can't crimp it very deep, so we've got 2 crimps on there. And also, I compress the powder charge a lot with that load, and that's also the case with the 410 grain cast bullet. Those are very compressed loads, and with age, the bullet can start pulling out of the case, and I don't want that to happen. And as for how we do it, at this juncture, we're modifying Lee Collett dies. Keith's modifying those, and so they are bullet specific at this juncture. Keith's going to make an adjustable die at some point that'll handle any bullet you might want to do. But we could do them for other calibers too. Like if you had a 454 Casull and you were having problems with bullet pull, we could help you out with that. using the same principles.
So you just mentioned that Keith is reading those out, or working on those. You guys are, for those that don't know, I mean, you guys are a machine shop, correct? T2 machine
Right.
is 1.5, correct?
Yeah, T2 Armory is a DBA.
Yeah, and the website is kind of, and Jim is.
So you guys do a whole lot more.
Yeah. I make a whole bunch of cast bullets. I have for quite a while. A lot for safari rifles, traditional rifles. A lot of it's kind of specialty stuff, like longer bullet nose bullets for 500 Magnum, so you can get more velocity out of it. The standard 500 Magnum, stuff like that, you know.
So with having those machining capabilities, that's had to make this a lot of easier adventure for you, I'm assuming.
It wouldn't have happened without Keith. You know, he's got a great skill set. He can make the impossible happen. So, and you know, I bring my own stuff to the table. I think we both agree that without the other, the whole venture never would have happened.
Yeah.
Well, when it comes to doing the machining on this metal, I'm assuming it's not easy to take a cylinder and get it concentrically, I'm probably using the wrong word, but get everything bored out properly and perfectly. Was there a learning curve to converting these, or did you guys kind of nail it on the first go around?
We kind of started out. I mean, the process has advanced somewhat,
and from the standpoint of speed.
Yeah. We've gotten a lot faster with it, and I'd say more precise. It's just we've streamlined the situation quite a bit since we started.
From the prototypes. Yeah,
and I think it's just
I have me personally. I have no history in that, so it's like I would not know where to start. It seems like you guys are just, you take a cylinder, start drilling on it, and then you guys can work some crazy magic with it. But that's foreign to me, how to do that kind of stuff. So you guys, in my mind, are pretty genius on that front. So another question that's asked is, can this thing go into the rifle calibers? So that's or the rifle platform. So there's one of the things that for the machining end of it, what in converting, you know, to different things, people mention the H&R, and they've mentioned some of the Thompsons. People mention lever guns a lot. What is it possible, do you think, that this cartridge can be converted into, other than the revolver at this point? Where can we see it possibly headed? Can a lever gun handle this properly?
So I would say the Encores and the handy rifles, I think those are acceptable platforms, because they've already been chambered in the 500 Smith & Wesson,
and definitely the Ruger number one,
and the Ruger number one, of course.
Yeah.
I think the lever actions are a bit more. In theory, we can't run the full length round in either a Marlin or a 1886, and I don't really want to put it in a Marlin, because that I've read a little bit about the conversions to 50 Alaskan, and I know that's not an extremely straightforward proposition, and there's some people who think it's kind of marginal, and I would hate for a 500 Smith & Wesson to get put in there loaded to maximum pressure, because we'd also have to load it down a little bit.
We have to shorten the case and the cartridge length. And I don't know, there have been 50 Alaskans built on the Marlin, and I'm not here to knock that. If you have one of those, I think those are cool. But I just don't think it's the right platform for stuff like that. You lose a lot of your safety margin. I think you might as well stick with a 4570 on a Marlin. You're not going to get more power by going to a bigger bullet. You're going to have to drop your pressures back, and you're going to reach probably the same power or maybe even less power with the bigger bullet. And then you've got all this extra expense. You've got to send it off to somebody like us to convert it. You've got to buy weird reloading dies or buy expensive ammunition, when you probably, in a Marlin, you could do just as well or better with a 4570 or a 444, if you ask me. The Winchester 86 is a bit of a different story, because that's a much stronger platform than the Marlin. But if you wanted to put a Bushwhacker in there, you'd still have to cut the case back and keep the cartridge length shorter. And we do have a guy who wants something like that from us, and I think we're going to do it. But there are some reasons why it would actually make more sense to go with something like a 50 Alaska or a 50 110 in that platform, because the rim size is the same as the 45-70. It's not smaller like it is with the Bushwhacker. The thickness is the same as a 45-70. It's not thinner like it is with the Bushwhacker. You're not going to need a new magazine tube. It's just that I think I'd go with a 50 110 myself on a Model 86. Not to say a Bushwhacker would be bad in the right lever action, but it would probably take a new platform. It was really engineered for a revolver, and I think a lot of people have missed that. I think it can go into certain rifle platforms and do very well, but it was designed with that 3-inch BFR cylinder in mind. And some people say, well, this should be in a rifle. Well, there's a million things like this that go into rifles already, like 458 Win Mag, 458 Lot, 50 B&M. I think if we had done this as a rifle cartridge, nobody would be talking about it, and I wouldn't be as interested in it. Not to say it's a bad rifle round,
And then you mentioned also it might interact with the muzzle brake differently, so it might not be quite the same as what people would expect.
Right. I think in a rifle it'd be okay. You could get away without a muzzle brake in a rifle. I think it would still be good.
Depending on the rifle.
If
you have a 6-pound Encore and Bushwhacker,
you probably really want that.
Yeah,
but it's probably in a rifle is probably going to be similar ballistically to a 458 Lot. And
depending on how you load it.
Yeah, most of those don't have muzzle brakes, so it's not the end of the world recoil wise, but I would want one.
Yeah.
Just to make things easier on the gun and the shoulder.
Right. Since people bring up a lot also about, they always want to go bigger and better and better, and you guys brought a pretty big, bad, better cartridge out right now, but immediately I've seen the rumblings in the comments of, well, what about a 600 Bushwhacker? So with the you guys know the proper way to explain this. Can you explain the real reason why we're not going to see 60 caliber handguns? Because that's, I think it's a funny one, but it's a relevant question.
Funny story, actually. The Bushwhacker initially the concept started as a 55 caliber. Jim's like, hey, can we fit a 55 caliber 3-inch long round into the long cylinder BFR? And we did a little look, and I said, well, maybe. Possibly.
Would have had to run it to lower pressure, though, and it wouldn't have been any more powerful than the 500.
Yeah, and we were doing a little bit of looking into that, but the problem comes in with the ATF classifies anything. The AFT, of course, classifies anything over 50 caliber in a handgun as a destructive device. Now, a shotgun doesn't get classed as a destructive device. And
unless
a rifle,
it's a short barrel
shotgun.
Taurus found that out the hard way.
A rifle doesn't get classed as a destructive device, or it can, but you can get a sporting exemption for a rifle. So a 577 Nitro Express, 600 Nitro Express, 700 Nitro Express, and other rounds that are over 50 caliber, those are all sporting exempt. But in a handgun, there is no sporting exemption. So if you want to build and sell over 50 caliber handguns, you have to be, let's see.
It's a special
type
of FFL.
You have to have a special type of FFL. You have to have a special occupation taxpayer. I'm not.
It's a lot of headache,
but it's way more expense.
SOT,
It's a lot more paperwork, and it's just I don't really know I don't think there'd be a big enough market to make it all worth it.
And you wouldn't be able to shoot 500 mag through it, 500 special. It wouldn't be any more powerful. You'd have to go and get a tax stamp to buy it. And the big thing isn't from the consumer angle because people buy suppressors and it's not such a big hassle. The big problem is really trying to sell them, trying to get set up legally where you can sell destructive devices. And it's frankly just something I never want to have to deal with.
Now, if that ever changed,
that's why I don't own suppressors.
Yeah. If it changed, yeah, it'd be sweet. I'd want to try something over 50 caliber in a handgun. But
Bigger
it's
Reavers
not
were
going
coming
to
the next
change.
day, right? So you guys know all these different guns. You guys taught different stuff, and you guys bring up a lot of different calibers and cool rifles. What you guys obviously have a lot of fun with the stuff. What is your favorite between the two of you? Each one of you, what would be your favorite guns? You know, it doesn't have to limit it to one, but what are your favorite guns?
Well, my favorite rifle is my 378 Weatherby Mag Mark V. And my favorite handgun is the 500 Bushwacker. But my number 2 is the Desert Eagle.
Gotcha.
I like the Desert Eagles.
Your favorite gun, that's for sure.
For guns that I currently have, I guess I would say, for rifle, I'm probably going to have to go with I have a 460 Weatherby Mark V, so you know we got the not too much different there. For handguns, if I go with auto-loading handguns, I'm going to have to say the LAR Grizzly. That's
okay.
I have a real soft spot for that gun. I really like that gun. Jim's rolling his eyes over here. But,
no, they're cool.
And as for revolvers,
we can pick on him for the Desert Eagle. So
yeah, I we go back and forth about which one is better.
No, I don't think I'm too contentious anymore. There's shortcomings to Desert Eagles for sure. I like them though.
I've never actually seen somebody that shoots it consistently and is very happy with it. I see people that have them and they like to show them off, but they don't like to shoot them very often. I don't have too much experience with them, but the couple I've touched have been broken.
You've got to really dial them in with the load. I've found that if you shoot really heavyweight bullets, they function a lot better. So in 50 AE, I like the 410 grain powder coated gas check bullet. And the manual tells you can't shoot cast bullets, but when they're powder coated and gas checked, it's just fine. And you get about 1,200 feet per second, and it's more reliable in my experience than those 300 grain bullets that most people like to shoot. So, and I found the same with 44 mag. I like 300 grain. 240 is fine as well, but I stay away from 180s because I don't care how hot you load them. It seems like 180s don't function well in the 44. And the 429 is a story I don't want to get into right now. The 429 is, well, we'll have some content on that eventually, but that's a headache.
And I do actually have a Desert Eagle, but I don't.
So did you guys just skip all the smaller calibers growing up and go straight to the big bore stuff? You guys didn't even play with 22s and 410s when you were kids, or how did that work out?
We did a lot with pellet guns and 17 HMR when we were really young. One of our mentors who got us into shooting, I'm not going to call him out by name, but he's a public figure in the bench rest community. Really cool guy, scientific minded, fun guy. He had us shooting 50 BMGs, 375 H&Hs when I was probably 8 or 10 or something, and so I got hooked young. But my first handgun I ever went in on was a 454. Started shooting that, a 454 Casole, and I started shooting that when I was 15 or 16. I think it was 15. And it was too much gun for me, but the Desert Eagle was my second handgun. I got along better with that. But I eventually got into the 357. I like 357. I like normal guns, and I don't look down on people who don't like big guns. because people have different needs, and not everybody likes fast cars, and not everybody likes big guns, and that is okay.
Right. Well, I've learned that I can enjoy a cylinder of a big, a large gun. It doesn't even have to be a cylinder. I can shots off my porch. I can ring the 100-yard plate or 50-yard plate or even the closer one. But whether it's a rifle, if I take out I can take out one of my 9130s, the Mosin, or even just sometimes just taking a couple shots out, the 460 long range, anything I have, the 69 Combat Magnum, 1 or 2 shots and I'm happy. I've learned a lot more that I like to hit that target out there or get real precise on one up close with a couple of shots that count. I used to be a little bit more of a higher volume shooter. I've never been a 9mm person, really. I have it, I use it, and I've taken it to class plenty of times, but I was always a 45 person, and that always capacity. I've liked revolvers that comes with lower capacity, and something about it, I just enjoy a lot more of having a couple accurate shots or a couple real powerful shots to control than dumping an AR. That's just not really ever been my thing, to go out there and drop 17 rounds out of a Glock or go through a bunch of mags in an AR. I mean, it's never been my thing. So I think a lot of people misunderstand the whole revolver thing, or the big bore revolver thing, and shooting these big guns. They like to say it's useless, that's pointless, and I really get frustrated with that, because no, it brings me joy, it brings me happiness. It's in different ways. Somebody enjoys a mag dump at a range with 9mm. I enjoy that mag dump all in one big boom with a revolver off my porch, and I can go inside with a smile. I still have 5 more rounds for the next 5 days, or 6 or 4 more rounds,
And there's more of a challenge to it. There's more of a challenge to mastering it. There's elements of mastering a 9mm or a 357,
yes,
obviously, that most of us are never going to achieve. Like the way some of these competitive shooters can shoot a 9mm, I can't do that, and I'm not going to say that's easy. But there's something special about mastering a big gun. It's its own it's its own specialty. Like I said, so that's a part of the appeal. And big power is fun. It's fun to blow through 10 boards and break a block on the other side. I love watching the ballistics gel. It's fun. These big game hunters, I think there's a big appeal in taking something down that can easily kill you. There's something to it.
right.
But
I'm limited to deer hunting in Ohio, but
yeah, and I'm not really a hunter myself. Neither of us is. But I see the appeal, and I think we talk a little bit too much about practicality, honestly, because I can come up with a whole list of practical reasons to own a Bushwhacker, but honestly, there are other platforms that will do the same thing too. So a 416 Rigby will do everything a Bushwhacker will do. A 458 Win Mag will do everything a Bushwhacker will do. Maybe there's some advantages. You got a more compact platform that's probably easier to manage. It's lighter, easier to carry. There's some disadvantages. It might not be. It's much louder. You're not getting around that.
right.
But I can come up with practical reasons to own these guns. But the fact is, most of the rounds that get put down range with it are for the shooter's enjoyment. And I think it enhances that enjoyment to know that it can be used for practical purposes. But this is true for everything. I think when you take the 9mm guys,
and really,
they go to the range and they say it's very important to stay vigilant and be ready for self-defense encounters. And that's why I go to the range every week, is so I can get dialed in, ready for anybody who comes after me. Well, I think that gives you purpose in what you do, but maybe it's not so much that the practicality, that the practical need for self-defense is driving your training, so much as the training is being justified by that practical concern. Like you want an excuse to go to the range more often, right? Because most of us don't have to defend our lives on a regular basis, and it's good to have that skill set. But I think we shouldn't overestimate how practical it is to own something like a 223 and do combat drills with it all the time. You know, I don't think we should overestimate how practical it is to do to practice all the time with a 9mm. There are practical purposes for it, but really what you're doing is you're enjoying yourself, and that's a big part of shooting.
Yeah. And I tell people it's whatever makes you happy. There's no right or wrong to the gun world. You shoot what you want to shoot, and you carry how you want to carry. And if you like to hunt, you do. You don't. There's no right answer here. As an instructor, it's really aggravating to hear other instructors always telling people you have to do certain things and you have to carry the 124 grain gold dot in the Glock 33, and you get really sick of hearing people get pinned down to one thing. So that's one of the reasons I jump all over this stuff where I see something like this come out and you guys are doing something different, because it's a breath of fresh air from what's been going on, and it burns people's minds out a little bit. I'll get one of my friends to go ahead and man up and shoot this thing one day and hopefully open up their mind. And it's going to be one of the 9mm friends I have. And not to pick on the 9mm guys, but yeah, they don't understand. I've tried to explain. One of the questions I kind of had for you, but we just pretty much touched on it. But why big bore? What drives you guys to want to shoot big bore? People think you and me and anybody else who likes us, they think we're crazy. The comment comes up all the time. Oh, not me. No way. Would never do that. And it's just I try to tell them you don't understand. It's like eating a chili pepper. We can all agree that you put pepper in your mouth, it's not going to exactly feel good, but then after a second, we get these chemicals flying around in our brain. That stuff starts feeling good for a weird reason. We don't know why, but it feels good and we want to do it again.
People like being close to death for some reason,
Right? Yeah. So my question is definitely, who was the first one to pull the trigger on the gun? Who was the one who manned up and said, that's it, I'm doing it. I'm going outside and I'm going to be the first one to see if I detonate myself?
It was Keith, yeah.
Yeah, I did almost all the initial load testing with it.
Though I will say, I put myself through the ringer with mine. I took a Plus L 500 mag. And for those of you who don't know, that's a standard weight 500 mag bullet that's seated all the way to the end of a Smith & Wesson cylinder with a compressed charge of slower than typical powder. And you get 200 to 300 feet per second more speed at the same pressure in a 500 mag. I went and I stuck a few of those in my new shiny BFR without a muzzle brake, 500 mag, and put it over the chronograph. I hit 1,840 feet per second with a 520. The same load does a bit under 1,600 in an 8 3/8 Smith 500, and I had no muzzle brake. And I felt that in my hand for about a week or two. I shot 2 rounds of it, and man, there's footage of it in that first Bushwacker video we did. That's the most intense thing I ever did of myself. Bushwacker doesn't come anywhere near that, not even with the heavy bullets. It's not safe.
No.
So I tell people never put those Plus Ls in your Bushwacker. I even knew a guy on Facebook. He wanted to duplicate some of that Plus L stuff. He didn't get anywhere near the velocity. I think he hit 1,600 with a 500 grain, and he was an older gentleman, and he actually broke his finger one-handing it. And he thought it was fun. And I'm like, I don't think that doesn't sound fun to me. One shot was enough. 2 shots was more than enough. I'm never doing that again.
Yeah.
I ended shooting down to the 500 special. I wasn't going any farther than that. I wasn't going to play around. Have you guys shot the 500 special round out of that BFR yet?
No, never have.
We haven't. We've talked about it, but we haven't. We have a few cut down pieces of brass.
It's it's really fun. It was because it's just like anything else you load down to a special. I'm having a blast with it because it seems like you're going to get a big bang. You got the big BFR in your hand, but nope, it just goes kerplunk and hits the target. And I'm actually I'm gonna see what it does in the ballistics gel. I want to see what happened with that, because I got the XTP mag bullet there, but maybe we'll get something out of it. I'm sure we're gonna get something out of it. I just want to see what happens to the actual bullet. But that's a really fun round. That's why I try to tell people this gun is versatile. because I got sick of that argument too, where people saying there's no use for it. And I said, look, your grandmother could shoot this thing with a 500 special in it. I'm telling you, she can. Just put the earplugs in.
Yeah, and you put the lightweight bullets in there, even full power lightweight bullets in a Bushwhacker, and I think more shooters could handle it and have fun than not. Like, you got a 310 grain in a 10-inch barrel doing 25-60, and that's H&H numbers, but it recoils maybe like a 44 Magnum and a full-size gun. You know, like, a lot of people could handle that. And there's going to be lighter bullets than that, copper bullets.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. I'm going to get some of my friends over here to shoot it. They're going to be shocked. But one thing, so we're talking about shooting it now. And as it becomes more controllable to shoot, of course, people are going to want to test themselves with speed. And I almost forgot earlier, can you explain for anybody that's going to use this as a reference why it's not a good idea for us to be Magnum cylinder dumping this firearm? And you mentioned that it's not bad to shoot rounds consecutively, but not to drop this cylinder, reload, drop the cylinder again. We don't want to get this thing heated up. Can you explain what that's all about? Because I think that's really important, because you mentioned it's not just this revolver.
So that's not really a Bushwhacker exclusive. I saw somebody who said the Bushwhacker's worthless because we tell people not to not to shoot a whole lot of cylinders through it before you let it cool down. That's just how I've always fired Magnum handguns and Magnum rifles. If you take a 300 Win Mag and you take 20 rounds and you just keep running rounds through it, magazine after magazine, on a hunting gun, that barrel, you know, pencil thin barrel, that's going to get so hot, you're going to have a lot of throat erosion. And in some calibers, I don't know, you take a 257 Weatherby or a 7 Rem Mag, you could roast, you could really roast the throat. You could essentially wreck your barrel for accuracy purposes in one range session. So that's also true with the 500 S&W Mag. You're burning up to perhaps 60 grains of powder if you use CFE black, a little bit less if you're using H110, but that's a lot of powder. And you put 5 rounds through there, and you've got all that friction, all that heat from all that powder, all that velocity. You need to let that barrel cool on the regular, or you will have more forcing cone erosion than you otherwise would. And that's true with the Bushwhacker too. So it's not a safety thing. It's just treating your gun in a way that will extend its useful lifespan. You know, it's not like your gun's going to blow up if you get it really hot. But yeah.
When I first heard that from you, and it made total sense to me, I think of analogies in my head, and I think with pictures, and the first thing I thought of is if you have a piece of iron and you strike it, it does a little bit of striking the iron, but if you make it red hot and you strike it breaks it mushes a little bit easier. From a blacksmith perspective, you get things red hot so that they're malleable. So in my mind, I picture it, you're getting your forcing cone red hot, and then you're smashing bullets into it. It's no different than a blacksmith smashing a shoe together for a horse, you know?
Yeah. And a Bushwhacker is a really moderate round by rifle standards. People are going to laugh at that, but it is. All that 458 Win Mag, 500 Bushwhacker, these are moderate rounds. They don't need a long barrel to burn all that powder. They're not overbore. So they're a moderate round in a way. But a revolver is a unique platform in that the forcing cone, it just wears a little bit more than a throat in a bolt action rifle. It's just how it is. So, you know, it's best to be a little careful with it. And that's true with a Bushwhacker. It's true with a 500 Mag. It's true with a lot of things.
And it just helps generate faster.
Yeah.
Just the bigger powder charges.
Yeah, more powder charge in a Bushwhacker. So, yeah.
Another comment that came up is they were talking about the carbon buildup in a cylinder, and they said that was dangerous to shoot the specials and magnums through there, and because we could create a pressure spike. Yeah, I mean, you guys, I think, explain what your thoughts are on shooting the calibers in there. I mean, I, in my opinion, just keep the cylinder clean and oiled like you recommended, but I don't think there's any actual risk to that long term or short term. Do you?
So the thing there is, in some calibers, you maybe could have a problem running shorter rounds through them. Like, I think a good example would be a 45 Colt and a 450 Fork Assault. If you build up a big carbon ring that will interfere with the brass releasing the bullet, you could see a pressure spike. So it's important to keep carbon rings cleaned out of chambers. I don't think that's even relevant with the Bushwhacker, though, because the Bushwhacker case is so much longer than even the 500 Magnum, and especially the 500 Special, that if a carbon ring forms, it is not going to interfere with the brass's release of the bullet. So I don't see it could cause some sticky extraction if you had a carbon ring present in the chamber, but I just don't see how it's going to interfere with the bullet release, and I don't see how it's going to cause a pressure spike. It is a good, you want smooth extraction, so keep them clean, obviously, but 460 Magnum is just as high pressure, probably a little higher pressure with a lot of loads than the Bushwhacker, and so many rounds of 45 Colt and 454 have been fired through those.
Right. And I've never had extraction problems from my 460, but I have had extraction problems from my actual 500 Magnum. So, and it's me neglecting the gun and getting a little bit dirty, I'm sure. But in general, it's that hard to keep the revolver clean either, because you want to keep them clean. They're pretty. They're supposed to be shiny anyway.
And it can be sticky extraction. Sometimes people just assume that it's a pressure issue, but there's a few things that can cause it. It can mean there's a pressure issue. But for example, in our experience with the 460 and in other people's experience with the 460 Smith & Wesson, you find mixed results. Some people like you have guns that you don't have problems with extraction. Other people do. And I've had sticky extraction with the 460 XVR with starting loads that are like 36, 40,000 PSI in a pressure barrel. They're not overpressure. The problem is probably that our particular Smith & Wesson, there's something going on with the chambers. There is very little chamber taper in a 460 for how long the case is. So that can cause, in that particular example, you can have sticky extraction without having a pressure issue. And it gets to be more common the longer, more cylindrical your cartridge. And that's why with the Bushwhacker, if you convert a Bushwhacker from a 500 mag, you talked about this in your videos, but if you convert a Bushwhacker from a 500 mag and not a different caliber, you're going to have that larger Magnum Research chamber left over. It's not going to clean up because it's larger than our chamber by a few thousandths. And they also heat treat their cylinders at BFR after they chamber them, so there's some warpage that occurs. And so you've only got about, the SAMI spec is 1.8 thousandths of taper for a 500 mag. And then forward of that, you're going to have our chamber, and you're going to have some more taper from there, but you're not going to have a lot of functional taper in that chamber, so you got to keep it oiled to keep extraction positive, just because of how long and cylindrical it is.
And then you mentioned on maybe like a 450 Bushmaster conversion, you wouldn't have that because you can ream it out with your reamer all the way through, correct?
We'll be able to say for sure pretty soon, because I'm going to do one like that, and we're doing some like that for customers. But our reamer design has a fair bit of taper in it, and our round has some taper in it. I say it's cylindrical, but it's not quite cylindrical. It's got 8 thousandths of taper built into the chamber, and there's even taper built into our dies. The top of the case is sized to a tighter diameter than the bottom of the case, so I don't think that we'll have to worry as much about lubricating chambers from conversions from other calibers.
And then while we're on that subject, just what's the list of caliber conversions that you are comfortable with right now, and then which ones are not working, and then what's the deal with the 4570 cylinder?
So with the 4570, you've got a thicker rim. you've got a larger rim. So you've got a rim that's, I believe, 608 thousandths wide, 70 thousandths thick, maximum spec. With a 500 Bushwhacker, you got a 59 thousandths thick maximum spec rim and a 560 thousandths maximum spec diameter. So you're not going to clean up the rim recess on a 4570 if you convert the round, and you're going to have I don't think you're necessarily going to have headspace issues, but you're going to be more on the maximum side of headspace. So we haven't converted any like that. We're going to run some tests to see if it's feasible. I don't want to just try to convert one and then find that the headspace issue is insurmountable. So I want to run some tests before we do any like that. With the other calibers, there's some custom shop calibers we can convert that I won't mention here, but the standard offerings are 5-shot. You can't do a 6-shot. 5-shot 30-30. Some of the newer 30-30s are 6-shot. 45 410, 444 Marlin, 460 Smith & Wesson, 450 Marlin, and perhaps 4570, though that may be less desirable.
Gotcha.
I don't think I'm missing any. I might be missing a couple, but I think that's it.
So one thing, of all the special requests that we've had for different rifles to put it in, or different guns to put it in, all these different requests, let's just wrap it up as that. I have one special request for you, and I say, and I've been saving that just for this right now, if I could have one special request, I think it tops everybody's special request. And Keith, I know you can do this. Gatling gun. BFR Bushwhacker Gatling gun. They do it with 9mm. We want to see it in 500 Bushwhacker.
That would be awesome. That
have a bunch of muzzle brakes on each.
Yeah. That would be absolutely awesome. I'm gonna have
that thing would be something like out of this world.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to clarify something really quick. I see somebody in the comments said that the Bushwhacker is not a moderate round. I don't mean that from power level. I mean that from the standpoint of powder capacity to bore size and bullet weight. So basically something's an overbore round if it burns really slow powder and needs a long barrel. So 50 BMG is kind of an extreme 50 caliber round, and a 3378 is kind of an extreme 30 caliber round. A 500 Bushwhacker is a moderate 50 caliber round, but a 50 caliber bullet is so large that a moderate 50 caliber round is still very powerful, and a moderate 45 caliber round is very powerful. There's certainly less. There's even more moderate 50 caliber rounds. I'm not saying it's like the low end of 50 caliber, but you don't need a long barrel to burn the powder, and you're not burning slow burning powder. It's not overbore.
Someone did recommend in the comments, they recommended that you guys do a 45 AARP Bushwhacker. So that's something you guys got to think about. Yeah, and then someone else mentioned the 4570, so we touched on that. I started that one. Someone asked, what about loads with little gunpowder? Is little gun an option for loading this for the guys doing it at home?
For Bushwhacker? No, don't click that. The little gun is too fast for really any bullet weight, too fast burning for any bullet weight in the Bushwhacker. Little gun's good I like it in 50 AE, 45 Win Mag. It's good for 44 mag, 500 mag, but each cartridge has its own preferred burn rates, and those might vary depending on the bullet weight. Of course, it's going to vary on the pressure too. Like if you shoot a 4570, there's 3 different power levels people mess with. You got the trapdoor, the Marlin, and the Ruger number 1 level. And so you might use a different powder if your target goal is 20,000 PSI versus 40,000 versus 60,000. But yeah, little gun wouldn't be a good choice for this. And Magnum handgun powders are not a good choice for the Bushwhacker. On the lighter side of things, the lighter bullet weights, you might even get into some stuff that's almost Magnum pistol powder. So like with the 230 grain Extreme Defender from Lehigh, I'm probably going to run CFE black, but don't try that at home until I get it figured out.
That's going to be really cool to see a 230 grain Lehigh bullet doing something to gel, I think.
Rated for 5,000 feet.
Oh my God. Because the way that the flat nose smacked, it did its own thing, but I can just imagine with the flutes on any other bullet or Lehighs would do, or any kind of hollow points. I mean, it's just, and while we're on that real quick, what's your opinion on I believe it's called sonoluminescence, as it compresses the gases and goes to the gel and it creates that track of fire. I mean, I've seen it in 1 or 2 bubbles of the gel. I've never seen it happen simultaneously through 60 inches of gel at one time. I'm super, super impressed by that. And do you have any idea how that actually reacts inside, let's say, an animal? If you were going to hunt big game, I'm assuming the exact same things are going to happen, if not worse, inside of your big game, correct?
Yeah.
And is that attributed to the copper bullet anyway?
Yeah, and there's some different perspectives on ballistic performance. There are some people who believe that you want a really heavy bullet moving very slow, and that will penetrate really well as you need it to. And that's true if you limit yourself to cast bullets. You don't want to push them too fast, or you'll get excessive expansion. You might get good terminal performance, but not great penetration. But with these copper bullets, you can get the speed and the penetration. And speed, I'm of the school that speed kills. We're both of that school. And there's more than one way to skin a cat. The Linebog guns, the JRH, those are great rounds, and they'll do a lot of stuff for you. You don't need a Bushwhacker for a lot of things. You don't need a Bushwhacker for anything, because there's other platforms that give you that performance. But you don't need those platforms either when there's the Bushwhacker. It's all up to you to choose. But speed with if you have the same mass traveling faster with a bullet that holds together, you will have more penetration and more damage to an animal. And I think that's why the old school safari guys determined that really the ideal power class for dealing with the heaviest, most dangerous game on earth is about 5,000 foot-pounds of muzzle energy, 2,000, 2,400 feet per second, maybe a little faster. Heavy bullet, 400, 500 grains, something like that, and a bullet that sticks together. It's what I would prefer, regardless of platform, for a big beast like a dinosaur.
All right. Well, I will report back to you guys what it does to an Ohio white-tailed deer at some point, I'm sure.
You might want to actually stick with a solid bullet. You don't need an expanding bullet when it's 50 caliber. It won't mess up the game too bad, So
now, honestly, would you? This is a really serious question. I mean, I kind of know what I'm doing with hunting a little bit, but you guys know this gun and these ballistics and what it does. Should I be going for a shoulder shot to make this bullet work, or if I go for the typical heart lung shot, would this thing zip straight through? Is this a candidate for a really good neck shot? Because I'm assuming with 5,000 foot-pounds, you can hit them anywhere in the neck and it's going to break their neck. What do you guys think about that, as far as flesh versus maybe thoracic cavity type of?
Well, that's not my area of expertise, but I'd say any shot you can take with a 308, you can take with a Bushwhacker.
Good enough answer.
Dead is dead, but
well, we did the shots on the plate. The reason I asked this because it's real weird. People have their opinions of what calibers can be used where, and when we shot those 3 lead plates, that was more damage than I've seen with a 3.5 shotgun. And there's only one company that I ever knew of that made a 3.5-inch shotgun slug, and that was the Lightfield. And those things are absolute monsters. This outperformed that, smashing the lead plate, and that's not very scientific. So that's amazing power to me. And I know I've had conversations with people about neck shots on deer. And one time I was convinced in Pennsylvania to take a neck shot on a deer with a rifle because I was told that it'll be fine. And it was a .308 rifle. And I know that I was pretty darn close, and it didn't work out the way I thought it would. Now, I know I did it with a shotgun, it would have taken care of business, but that was a rifle. And I think what I did was I pierced through instead of having that kinetic impact and breaking her neck, because it wasn't a perfect shot. You know, I zipped through, but the shotgun round would have always done the pretty good neck break. And I'm assuming that this is the same way because, like I said, this thing out smashed the light field slug. And I thought that that was going to be a hard feat. But
well, when you have something like a .308 or even something like a very high velocity small caliber rifle like a .257 Weatherby or a 7 Rem mag, you are depending on the bullet expanding to cause the damage. You know, the bullet can, if it doesn't open up, if you shot a solid 7mm bullet, you could have tremendous penetration, but not a lot of damage. So the .308 and rounds of that nature, even the more moderate rounds like .308, if they don't have a lot of tissue to expand in, you know, you may have problems with not actually causing very much damage. Because those bullets are, you know, depending on what you're using, heavily constructed, and they need some tissue to work in. But a 50 caliber bullet starts life as 50, and it might end life as a 70, but it's not going to turn into a 30.
I'm pretty sure that solid copper that went through the block, that one, that turned into a 70 caliber bullet. I'm pretty sure that had a widened out face to it. So
yeah.
I like that a lot. Well, we are about at 1 hour and 20 minutes, and I don't want to keep you guys too long, but you guys have been a wealth of information. And I mean, I appreciate everything you guys are doing. Our gun community is boring. And that's why, you know, a lot of you guys that are watching, you guys are my regular viewers, and you've seen I've pretty much put this gun out about as much as I can this week. And it's because I really want to show you guys what these two incredible geniuses are doing. And I'm not trying to pump them up at all. They're doing really cool stuff that nobody's got the guts to do. Companies that have huge research and development teams, and this is their job. They all day and drink coffee. I don't know what they actually do. But you guys are doing some awesome stuff, and I appreciate what you're doing. You're putting life back into it. Nobody thought, in my opinion, that anyone was going to do anything with the 500 Magnum. And then when you guys did it, it was like, how come I can't believe nobody else did this, but you guys did. So I thank you. I thank you guys for taking the time to come here today and have this conversation, answer a lot of questions. And yeah, we were going to keep on this channel. We're going to keep rocking the Bushwhacker. So I wish you guys all the luck and success, and keep rocking on with it. And if there's anything else you guys have to say before we close out, the mic is open for both of you.
Okay, well, we're gonna keep trying to spice things up for you guys, and I hope you enjoy what you see. There's a lot more coming. It's not just the Bushwhacker. So
got some ideas that are probably going to be kind of out of left field from what we've already done, but kind of related.
So stay tuned for that, and I appreciate all the positivity, and I've loved the videos. I couldn't ask for a better review, honestly, of the gun. I think you present it better than we do, and it's cool to see. You know, I told somebody this. I don't remember who. I said it's fun to see those big bullets doing something other than flying over the air over a chronograph. You know.
Yeah, it is interesting. I like it a lot. Well, thanks for doing it again. That's just an awesome project that you guys brought to life. So I feel very privileged to have it. It's a rarity. It's like it's a handful of guns in the world that are like that right there. So I have this total happy kid feeling about it. It's awesome. I smile every day now because I have a Bushwacker. But thank you guys for all your comments. I didn't get to comments in here because we were focused on just talking about a lot of stuff. But I know you guys are talking amongst yourselves, and thanks for that. We'll be back here on Monday and Wednesday, and every now and then T2 they pop in there and they answer some questions. Anyway, you guys are always going to see them in the comment section, and that's about it. I'm going to wrap it up, and basically you guys know the spiel. And thanks, Brad, for policing things. Hope you didn't have to boot too many people today. And in the meantime, stay safe, have fun, and keep shooting. See you all later.
See you guys.
Take care, y'all.